From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Pork celebrates a big year.
2024 was really the year of pork in terms of exports.
How that translates into dollars for pork producers as a winter storm barrels across the U.S.
We're urging everyone to already have an evacuation plan.
As we get a new look at the U.S. grain crops still in the bin and how South American crops are faring.
Very close to record all-time highs of beans.
A breakdown of what the latest numbers mean right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer. Great performance in the field makes Pioneer brand corn #1 in America. For a winning season, it's Pioneer brand corn. Your best year starts here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. USDA giving us a new snapshot about major grains and what's still in the bin here and around the world. Releasing its monthly supply-demand report, the numbers bringing few reactions from grain markets on Tuesday. Now let's focus for a moment on U.S. ending stocks, with USDA leaving the corn and soybean numbers unchanged from last month. Corn at 1.5 billion bushels, soybeans at 380 million bushels, while knocking 4 million bushels off the pile when it comes to wheat, now at 794 million, due to slightly higher demand here at home. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins me. Michelle, the big story in this month's report are the cuts made to some South American production.
Clinton, the February WASDE is usually fairly benign, and USDA didn't disappoint, leaving domestic balance sheets unchanged, a stark contrast from the shock we saw in the January report. However, they did make some minor adjustments in the global and South American numbers for both corn and soybeans. The question, though, is will it make a difference? USDA did make some slight revisions in South American production in the February WASDE. For soybeans, Brazil production was unchanged at a record 169 million metric tons. Argentina production was lowered by 3 million metric tons to 49 million.
Yes, they did lower the Argentina crop, and that was expected. Argentina's been dealing with some dry weather.
The question now is what happens with weather in South America and possible future revisions, because the soybean crop there is still a record and larger than last year. Plus, while world ending stocks were lowered 4 million metric tons, it doesn't move the needle.
The world numbers, it really doesn't matter. I mean, you're still looking at, they get very close to record all-time highs of beans. In the world, stocks use 1 to 2, number 1 or number 2, stocks use records at all-time highs. So we've got plenty of beans.
South American corn production was also lowered by 1 million metric tons in Argentina, but also 1 million metric tons in Brazil. And the latter surprised McCormick.
I'm guessing they're going to plant the safrinha crop late, which maybe means maybe not as many acres, or potentially you could run out of water here.
World carryout was lowered 3 million tons on corn at 290 million, leaving little room for error.
The world carryout number on the corn, it continues to shrink. It's one of the tightest stocks use we've had in the last few years. So what this means, Michelle, is it is going to put the pressure on for the safrinha crop that's just getting planted, and then the U.S. crop and how many acres we can get in, as well as how this crop produces.
McCormick thinks the reason USDA left domestic numbers unchanged was due to the uncertainty of tariffs and the effects of retaliatory tariffs on U.S. exports. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Another big story we're following right now. A series of winter storms this week will roll across much of the country. As Laura Aguirre reports, it started with snow, ice, and rain along a 1,500-mile stretch of the U.S., and it's continuing today.
People should stay home. If you don't have to go anywhere, don't go.
Solid advice from Petersburg Public Works, and not just for Virginians, but for millions of people living up and down the eastern U.S. today. The first stop on a week-long rotation of snow, ice, and rain set to stretch coast to coast over the next few days. Virginia road crews in some counties worked 12-hour shifts to get as much salt and brine down as possible. Cities like New York and Boston still digging out after a weekend winter blast, now bracing for more, possibly later this week, as round 2 on Wednesday brings heavy snowfall from the Central Plains to the Midwest before revisiting the Northeast into Thursday. Then, by week's end on the West Coast,
We are now looking at what will be, up to this point, the most significant storm season so far this winter, impacting the greater Los Angeles area from Wednesday into Friday.
one that could pose a high risk of mudslides and debris flows over areas scarred by the recent fires in Southern California.
We're saying right now approximately a 50 to 70% chance of that activity.
Forecasters say the storm could eventually spread over the entire length of the state.
We're urging everyone to already have an evacuation plan, have multiple ways of receiving emergency alert information.
I'm Laura Aguirre reporting for AgDay.
Meteorologist Alyssa Heilman joins us with the very latest on the trek of this big winter storm.
Starting here with the outlook for that winter storm that's going to move through starting at 7 a.m. on Wednesday. Again, seeing that system in the plains and just north of Texas there. Snowfall, mixed precipitation, as well as some rain. Now as we go through Wednesday, of course, this system continues to move further and further east, impacting areas of the Great Lakes and of the Midwest, and continues to move northeast into portions of Canada as we go later into Thursday. And again, seeing the big impacts from that system and then continuing to move out into the east and into the ocean. Then we have another system that's actually going to come through with a similar track Saturday into Sunday, seeing that system form, and again, similar track to what we're expecting for that Wednesday, Thursday system, going all over again for your Saturday into your Sunday, moving into portions of the Great Lakes and then out into the east as well. And before the snow falls, Beasley the Beagle getting in a little fun with the cattle in Banner County, Nebraska. Kim sharing this video with us. She says Beasley just wanted to play a game of tag. Kim says there's now below zero wind chill and it's starting to snow. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
The Trump administration right now appealing a court decision to unfreeze federal funding. Now, as we've reported, the temporary 90-day freeze stretches across the federal government, including some USDA programs. The agency holding payments related to the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act and other programs like EQIP and the Rural Energy for America program known as REAP. Now, some farmers report anticipated cost share payments are now on hold, and that has them worried about paying bills as they come due. One farmer speaking to CNN about it.
We signed our contract with the government about a year ago to put solar panels on our barn. And about a year later, the project was complete, and we were supposed to get our funding the week that the funding freeze was announced. And we still haven't seen the money. And when we asked the government representative where it was and what we should do, they informed us that our funding request had been rejected due to the funding freeze.
Now, Resnick says programs like this have helped them build their operation through the years. Butterbee Farm grows flowers in greenhouses and in fields just north of Baltimore. Meanwhile, food aid donations have resumed to the UN's World Food Program. The WFP said there was about 500,000 metric tons of food sitting in limbo. It had been purchased from farmers through the Food for Peace Title II program. With the pause lifted, food purchases and deliveries under existing USAID agreements can now resume. As we've reported earlier this week, USAID buys roughly $2 billion in U.S.-grown crops for distribution annually. Now, federal health officials say a dairy worker in Nevada is infected with a new strain of avian flu. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announcing the case, saying the illness was considered mild and the person has recovered. The Nevada dairy worker was exposed at a farm in Churchill County in the west central part of the state. USDA reported for the first time last week that a second strain of avian flu was found in dairy cattle in Nevada. Officials add there is still no evidence the virus is spreading from person to person, and said the CDC considers avian flu still to be a low risk to the general public. A positive development in the fight against avian flu in Georgia. That state's Department of Agriculture lifting the suspension of poultry activities in the state. It comes after testing, depopulation, and disinfecting were done in the areas of concern, and no new cases were then found. Last month, all poultry exhibitions and sales in Georgia were suspended after positive avian flu cases were identified at 2 facilities in Elbert County. The highly contagious virus was responsible for the death of more than 40 million egg-laying birds last year, and it's been a contributing factor in the soaring price of eggs. Grain markets see very little reaction to USDA's latest reports. We'll break down what's next for prices coming up. And later, Valentine's Day is a day of love, but there are often other feelings to express. These animals are offering to help in the country.
AgDay is brought to you by Germinator Closing Wheels. Germinator steel closing wheels provides a 13 bushel advantage per acre in no-till and a 7 bushel advantage per acre in conventional. Do you have enough room in your bin to switch to the Germinator?
One of the major unions representing dock and port workers is nearing a deal for a new 6-year contract. The International Longshoremen's Association says a master contract is close. It would cover workers from the East and Gulf Coast ports. Now, according to the latest details, it comes with a more than 60% wage increase over the next 6 years. There are job guarantees tied to more automation if it's introduced, and it comes with enhanced health care and retirement benefits. The contract would be retroactive back to October of last year. The February WASDE report was a bit of a snoozer, at least for grain markets. Michelle Rook has details on Tuesday's trade in Markets Now.
Grains all ending lower on Tuesday after the WASDE. Brian Grady with Pro Farmer is with us. And Brian, we didn't get a whole lot of fodder in the report, but we really didn't get any tightening of ending stocks in corn or soybeans like the trade thought we might. So did we see negative reaction as a result?
Yeah, a little bit disappointing, Michelle. Especially on the corn side, I think after the big cut to ending stocks in January, the trade expected that USDA would raise its export forecast, that it went too low last month on that, so just a little disappointing. I don't think there's anything major there other than just disappointment.
And the South American tweaks that we got really don't make a lot of difference in the global scheme, do they?
Absolutely not. The private estimates have been about where USDA is, and quite honestly, the market doesn't turn to USDA as the primary source on many of those anyway. CONAB will be out with its new production forecasts on Thursday for Brazil, and so that probably will be a better source of information.
So talk about what we start trading now in terms of what is it, South American weather? Do we go back and start trading this tariff fear?
Yeah, so if we're sitting here in a normal year, I would tell you it's South American weather is the primary as we move forward over the next 1 to 3 months or so. Not the case right now, probably because of the tariff stuff and how volatile and uncertain that is. And so that probably takes primary importance within the marketplace, but South American weather will definitely come into play, no doubt about that.
Yeah. And recently we had went up and hit some chart resistance in both corn and soybeans. What would it take for us to revisit those areas, you think?
Well, the funds are pretty heavily long in the corn market right now. They're long in soybeans. So we need to continue to see money flow into the long side of the markets. We need to get above $5 in nearby corn futures. And I think that would trigger maybe some more buy stops. But that's going to be a tough nut to crack. Soybeans, they're primarily a follower to corn at this point in time. They do have enough strength on any given day to lead to the upside, but I think primarily you're going to need to see the corn market do the bulk of the pulling.
Thanks so much, Brian Grady with Pro Farmer. We'll have more AgDay coming up. Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rook on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
With those two systems moving through, we got to take a look at our snowfall estimate starting Wednesday at 7 a.m. when that snow system starts in portions of the central United States. Again, seeing that snow starting as we go into the afternoon hours of Wednesday and then moving further northeast into portions of the Midwest and the Great Lakes, seeing some of those higher totals there around 3 to 6 inches. Again, as it moves into areas of the Great Lakes, especially into Michigan, then out into Canada as well. That just continues to increase those totals as it gets up into Canada. And then we're looking at that second system that moves through this weekend for Saturday and for Sunday. We start to see those totals again increase for portions of the Great Lakes, especially again Michigan there, as well as portions of Minnesota and northern Illinois. And that continues as it goes into Canada as well. So similar tracks of those systems bringing some snowfall for midweek, for today and tomorrow, and then as well for the weekend. Temperature outlook for February 16th to the 20th, we've got some below normal temperatures for portions of the northern United States and really actually the central United States as well. All of this blue, again, below normal temperatures, but specifically there in areas of the Midwest and the Great Lakes, Minnesota, as well as portions of Illinois and northern Indiana. Going to see those below average, very well below average temperatures for that time period. That same time period, let's take a look at that precipitation outlook. Again, February 16th to February 20th. Some wetter than normal conditions in portions of the northwestern United States, as well as for portions of the southeastern United States. A little bit drier for areas in the southwestern United States. Turning to some of our cities here, we're seeing Deming, New Mexico, partly cloudy with wind, high 58, low of 31. Newton, Iowa, high of 13, just a low of -7. Finally, Lake Hamilton, Arkansas, high of 45, low of 29.
Pork exports had a banner year in 2024. We have the latest numbers next. And later, finding ways to tell people how you feel. Well, these zoo animals can help, kind of. I'll explain in the country. Some good news about pork exports last year. The final numbers are in, and exports eclipsed previous highs in both volume and value. That's according to numbers compiled by the U.S. Meat Export Federation and USDA. December pork exports totaled more than 267,000 metric tons, which is slightly below last year's large volume, while value increased 1% to $771 million. Now, these numbers pushed the full year volume to over 3 million metric tons, up 4% from the previous year and topping the previous high reached in 2020. Export value totaled more than $8 billion, up 6% from the previous record set back in 2023.
2024 was really the year of pork in terms of exports. Broad-based growth across several different markets. It's been that way for most of the year. Mexico, Central America, you've got the Oceania region, Colombia, a lot of highlights, and really exciting to see this broad-based growth. And I think we're well positioned on the pork side to see continued growth in 2025.
Hallstrom says it's also about payback, and he says it came out to $66 a head for every animal slaughtered on the export side of pork. The National Pork Producers Council says the health of our nation is at risk. The group's vice president expressing serious concerns about a 2025 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee's report. It's not happy with the committee's recommendations, including reducing and replacing red meat with plant-based proteins. MPPC says it would lead to several significant nutrient gaps and deficiencies as they require higher amounts of protein and nutrients that are provided by animal-based proteins. Now, the committee's report now moves to Health and Human Services along with USDA, where final guidelines will be written. And we're just days away from Valentine's. Up next, these animals are helping some people say, "I don't love you" in the country. Not interested in celebrating Valentine's Day this week? Maybe thinking of ways to honor your ex? Well, one zoo in Texas has a few ideas, and it's all for a good cause, and some are gifts a farmer can appreciate. For a $10 donation to the Fort Worth Zoo in Texas, it will dedicate a pound of poop to the crappy person of your choice. A third-party company will even transform it into compost. You will be emailed a special certificate for your donation to the Do Some Good campaign. For donations starting at just $5, the San Antonio Zoo will name a cockroach, rodent, or vegetable after an ex and feed it to a zoo animal. Finally, the Wildcat Ridge Sanctuary in Oregon is holding a fundraiser called My Bloody Valentine, and for a $75 donation, they will feed an ex's heart to a wildcat. Now, it's not a real heart. It's meat in a Jell-O mold in the shape of a heart. Some unique ways to say, "I don't love you," and help out a good cause. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day out in farm country.